All right, hey everybody, welcome to the IronTrap podcast.
What's up, guys?
Sorry we missed a week. We've been incredibly busy, and the week just flies by, and it almost happened today.
Yes, Mike. I also went on vacation at the end of the week where we typically film, so the first half of our week was a little hectic, unfortunately. So
Every day of the week.
yes,
Excuse me.
especially now at the last month, it's been balls to the wall, basically, sun up to sundown.
Yeah, so we missed one. We did get some comments. We apologize about that, but it's good to see that we've already trained people that we're putting
Yes.
podcasts out weekly. So that's pretty cool that somebody, people were actually like looking for the podcast and were confused why it wasn't there. So we'll try our best not to miss them. That one was a little bit of a flub up. So, but yeah, so new stuff going on right now.
Big progress at the mill.
Yeah. The mill has been. If you have noticed that I haven't been in videos quite as much, and you've been seeing a lot more Steve or Mike or whatever, that's because I'm literally probably in a ditch, fixing boards or up on a ladder, fixing boards or doing just about everything. And it's been a little crazy, but we're making pretty good progress pretty quickly. So that's it did stop. Probably Steve. Steve might be out smoking a cigar.
Who's that stranger? Stranger danger.
Stranger that smokes cigars every day around lunchtime. So anyways, so we've been making really good progress on the building. It's pretty cool. A lot of the neighbors that, there's actually like a walking trail behind the one building that goes to the community park in that little town. And there's a ton of people walk that every day, walk their dogs, elderly people that are just taking little walks. And most everyone that's, pretty much everybody that stopped by is saying positive things, which is also very nice. But B, they're, most of them are surprised. I was talking with a friend last evening. I had dinner with a friend, and it was like, I guess nowadays people aren't used to people, like, it's not as common that someone like takes on a project like that and just starts doing it themselves.
Yeah, it's true.
Most of the time anymore, like people just, someone will buy it and then they'll hire a contractor, and then you gotta wait for the contractor to do the thing, and it's like things take really long to happen. And like it was literally like the first like week of us owning it, I was just like, all right, let's start fixing some boards and doing whatever. And we've been out there. We've been very fortunate. I had put a call out on my personal Facebook just to local friends looking for general labor, and I've had a lot of friends that have offered up like, hey, I'm off Mondays and Tuesdays every other week. I can come one of those days. And hey, I'm in between jobs. I got this week before I start my new job, I can help you out for a couple of days. So like between all that, it's been cool. The only hard part is that I literally have to be there almost all the time with those people because they're only there for such a short period of time. I kind of have to guide them what's going on. I can't just be like, here, fix this wall. I know you're only here for today. And
it's also random days. Like I'm available Thursday this week and Tuesday next week. And it's like trying to plan all of our craziness around everyone else's schedules.
Yeah, I've pretty much just been, moving my schedule. If we have somebody available, I just make myself available that day. So since I have an extra set of hands, so it's been pretty cool because we've had a couple days recently, like last week or Thursday, we had like 6 people there.
There was Tuesday this week. We had another 6 people there.
Yeah, so it was just a matter of between friends, and my nephew's off of school, so he's been helping some, and our buddy George comes occasionally and helps out. So it was like sometimes the stars align and we have like a crew of people. And last Thursday it was like we got what it would have taken me and maybe one helper, like 3 weeks worth of stuff done in like definitely. One day. So it was like pretty cool. So it's nice to start seeing
big progress.
The roofs are all fixed now, so nothing is leaking, which is really good. Knock on wood.
Yes.
So all that's really great. So that's what's going on. That's our mill. Quick little mill update. We're, as far as car show stuff goes, we are being very reserved on going to events just because we are like, it's so insanely busy. Even for instance, like this Saturday, there's a kind of local show a bunch of friends are going to. And I'm just like, I have to stand on the Mercury because all this week I've been doing mill work and then trying to juggle what else is going on. So it's like I gotta. But the goal is for Wheels of Time. We're definitely still doing Wheels of Time.
Yep.
Great show if you're anywhere local. Even if you're hours away, it's a good show where it's like a 3-day show, kind of hometown feel-y, but still a bigger show.
Definitely.
But it doesn't feel like to me at least, it doesn't feel like it's like a Good Guys or something
No.
like that. It's still more a lot of like old school cars and stuff like that.
Very
So,
laid back.
yeah, very laid back. So if you like that kind of stuff, we always have a big booth there. They're very nice that they give us a cool spread. So we'll have a bunch of cars there as always. I'm trying to bust ass so I can get the Mercury in one color for that event. So fingers crossed that.
Matt's been working at the mill all day and then coming back here and sanding his fingertips off in the evenings.
Yeah, it's been a lot of craziness. So Kate went to the beach last. Fortunate for her, and I guess fortunate for me, she went to the beach like Saturday through Tuesday. So like I was just like working like when I was younger, where I was just like I went out like Saturday, I worked all day, like 8 or 10 hours. Went inside, Moon and I ate, hung out for like an hour or two, and then I went back outside. Moon stayed in the house.
Yeah.
And I went back out till like 11 at night and sanded.
It's like the good old days of IronTrap.
So fingers crossed we'll have that there, but it should be a good time. If you can make it out, it's always good.
I'll hopefully be driving my car to and from my house every day.
That's the other big news.
Yeah, I got my video came out today on Friday. Got my car. They got my car. I should say I. Everyone else at IronTrap got the car. All the loose ends finished up, and I took it for 2 decent drives yesterday. Filled it up for the first time.
They're really loose ends. They're still loose ends.
Yeah, there's still plenty of other stuff to finish, but took it to the mill as well. Drove it to the mill. Didn't have any catastrophic problems.
Yeah,
I didn't have to call for help at all. The first drive we had to fix a few things. Did some carb tuning, but it drove pretty well. I mean, I didn't really feel anything that was unsafe. Just need to put some time in on just little tweaks here and there.
Yeah.
Steering needs to be adjusted a little bit. Just dumb stuff that you have with the first few road tests.
Yeah, and especially any of these cars. Unfortunately for us, the way we build cars is not conducive to things being missed.
Yeah.
So all the cars, because we jump around a lot, it's just the nature of the beast. There's always stuff that you're like, oh crap, we missed that, whatever.
Like literally on what day was that? It was Wednesday. It was like the last hour of the day. I was like, I'm just going to drive it to the gas station, go to get in and push the clutch pedal to the floor. And because we tightened stuff up, there was like a bind. Clutch pedal just stayed at the floor. It didn't return. So when Thursday morning, I had to take the floorboards out and adjust some stuff to even just drive it for the first time since we fixed a bunch of stuff. So hopefully every day I'm going to try and drive it next couple weeks and fix it. I got to put door safety latches on it so the doors don't fly open when I'm driving. But other than that,
you're close.
Very close.
So he's doing the normal deal. You get a little further from home, try and drive it in different situations so you know if it does something weird.
Yeah, yesterday was a pretty good test for hot because it was hot as shit yesterday. So I drove it to the mill and I let it sit in the sun for like 15 minutes. Started right up, didn't hesitate, which is a good sign. Mm-hmm. But this afternoon is the car show at Boyertown.
Oh, yeah, the Boyertown Museum.
So I'm going to try and drive it over there for a little bit. We'll see. Hopefully the weather holds out.
Yeah. Should be good. So anyways, well, that's kind of what's going on, which is a bunch going on. So for our topic today, we are discussing, this is kind of like, again, a lot of these ideas are spurred by customer questions that we get and people that, we talk to at events and different stuff. So one thing I feel like a lot of people struggle with when you're doing a nostalgic car, if you will. Mm-hmm. I always hesitate to say traditional because, but nostalgic car, traditional, whichever term you want to use. A lot of people sometimes struggle with like different parts of the build or parts that they pick or the overall feel of the car. Where do you get inspiration from? We get people to ask us that a lot. Like, what magazine should I look at? Where do you get inspiration from? So we thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about some of the different stuff because some of it's you would think of and some of it you might not think of. So that's kind of what we figured we'd discuss. Different eras and different things like that. But I would guess the first thing to start off with, we talk about it a lot in the videos, is like if you're trying to figure out what you're building, a lot of times it's going to either start with a part or a group of parts, or maybe a body, a blank slate, or a car, or maybe just like another car that you're trying to.
I was going to say a photo.
Yeah, a photo. You're trying to maybe replicate a car that your relative had.
According to the shirt that Matt's wearing right now.
Yeah.
You see a photo of a car that ate your brain.
Ate
Shout
your
out
brain.
to Piero.
Yeah, so you might see a car that just, a photo of a car or a car in particular that just like is, blows your mind, or just you're wild for, and that's your jumping point. But I think that's the first kind of thing. If say you're starting with just, hey, I want to build X, pick what that car is, whether it's a roadster or a custom or whatever. I think it's very important when we get a lot of people that ask us. Usually my answer when people are just kind of like starting that process is I usually say, get a bunch of old magazines. Yep. Or if you don't want to buy magazines, go on the Ham. We talk about the Ham a lot. Droppy Journal. There's a lot of great threads, like hot rods of the best hot rods of the 50s.
Schedule some time, because some of those threads are like 1,000 pages long.
I don't know about 1,000, but there might be 100 pages long.
There's a lot of photos to look. Thousands and thousands and thousands of photos to look through.
Yeah, there's a lot of information there, and if you go in the 50s one, you'll get a nice mix of historic photos and people that built cars. And what I always tell people, like I like doing the magazine thing because it's kind of cool, because you can just pick some magazines and flip through them. And if you're just starting out and you have really no idea, I would start either taking photos with your phone or writing down stuff that you like or certain cars that you like. And I tell people to do that a lot, because what you'll end up finding after you maybe look through a stack of magazines, or borrow, if you have a friend that has a bunch of magazines like myself, like borrow a stack of magazines and get one or two from each couple years and just look through them and start taking photos of the cars that you like.
Yep.
You don't have to like everything about it, but like just a snapshot, of different things that you like, and then go back and look at those photos and what is the common theme. I know for me, when I'm doing that kind of stuff, there's usually a common theme. Like you start looking through it and I'm like, man, I seem to really like,
This is what Matt does a lot on flights.
Yeah.
We'll be flying, and I just look over and Matt's scrolling through photos on his phone of hot rods.
Reference photos.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
So I'll you start looking through, and what are the things you like? What inspires you to want to build that car? And there's certain cars you see that you're like, oh my God, that car's damn near perfect.
Yeah,
maybe
100%.
Maybe the color's not quite right, but like everything else is great, or the interior is a little different than you would do, but like, what is it? And a lot of times, it's funny because a lot of times people will come to us and are like, oh, I want to build a Model A Roadster, blah, 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 whatever. And they start telling us what they want to do, and you tell them to do that. And then they start showing us at an event, like on their phone, like photos of cars, like we're saying, that they like. And I go, every photo you just showed me was a 32 Roadster. I don't think you want to build a 28 Roadster. Yeah. I think you want to build a 32 Roadster. And you may not be as happy. You could build a 28 Roadster, but every photo is not that. So, so you might want to. You subconsciously may not want to build the thing you're saying you want to build, and that's where you need to have a gut check with. Are you going to be as happy with a?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's people are just getting into this stuff, and a Roadster is a Roadster. It's hard when you first get in, like Model A Roadsters and a 32 Roadster. They look similar enough if you don't really know. If you're just learning. But a lot of times, back to that, you go through the magazines, you'll start seeing some things that you like, certain different things, and you can start looking at the parts on the car. And as most of the cars that you're picking have wire wheels, there's probably a part of that you like, and that's one of the key things. So you can almost start formulating your parts list, because you can start saying like, oh man, I really like this, and figure out what those parts are. But once you get past like the basic stuff of like, do I want a Roadster? Do I want a coupe? It's like then it's like, what inspires you to build a car of a certain style? Like if you pick, I like a 50s style car, a 40s car. Like how can you help pick stuff that inspires you? And I feel like a lot of cars, traditional stuff has become starting to become sort of cookie cutter. I don't say this, I'm not taking a shot at anybody, but like with everything, I think a lot of us are replicating a like maybe a handful of super famous
100%.
cars. So there's like how many cars, like the Glory Coupe, we talked about the interior I did in the Mercury, like how many people have copied basically the Glory Coupe.
Well, according to the internet, they didn't do that back in the late 40s. That was never done.
The interior, yeah. But like the Glory Coupe as a whole, a lot of people have done 3 windows.
Like every 36 3-window.
It's like chopped. There's a lot of cars that are like
emulated. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. A bunch of those things, and maybe they changed the color.
I mean, if I would do a 36 3-window, it'd be goddamn near close to that.
I agree. That is tough with that. But that's like the part of like, I always struggle with, I want to make a car, like Piero did a great job. He cloned a car. That's a whole different type of person. So that's like, sometimes I feel like, I'm not saying that it's easier, but you have a guideline. You have it's almost like restoration. You kind of know this is what I need to do. But if you're trying to do like a nostalgic build inspired by maybe these 3 famous cars, you still end up with a car that a lot of the same features are there. So sometimes I struggle with like, I want to make something a little different. Like, what can I do that's like a little different but still the same that, makes it my own? And that's where you start looking at different things of like an era or whatever that maybe inspires you.
And the cool thing with the little books, especially, as you look, like the hot rods had all the big,
most of the pretty famous
cars. Some of the little books, as you look through them, there'll be some like just one photo of a car that only made a small little insert. And some of those cars are actually more interesting to look at because you've never seen them before. There's not a million photos out there on the internet. And as you page through them, and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know. Like a couple of the little books, there's 34 cabriolets in that you've never seen any photos of. Yeah. As Matt was looking through little books as I was building my car, he'd be like, hey, have you ever seen a photo of this cabriolet before? I've never seen it. There's Moon out in the grass over there.
I'm just watching him. He's like at the edge of my neighbor's drive. Like, I have this big yard, and he's like at the edge of my neighbor's drive.
Somebody will walk by and pet me.
But like, yeah, they're what's cool with some of those cars too is they have like maybe some little bit wackiest stuff, but it's kind of cool. Like maybe the Nerf bars or the Nerf bar bumpers or something are a little different. You're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like how they did the little,
or a little bit of a different gauge choice.
Yeah. So, like, that's what I take a lot of photos of in those magazines. Like, maybe the whole car is, like, a little beyond what I'm into, but you see the bumpers or the gauge layout or maybe the material choice, and you're like, oh, that's kind of neat. That would be cool. Just taking that little piece and moving it over here to, like, a famous car's silhouette that really works well. And that's, I think a lot of the silhouettes of these cars kind of have already been done.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to, whether it's a hot rod or a custom, back in the day, there was somebody to chop that car or modified it in a way that pretty much they nailed it.
Oh, 100%.
And you could change it a little bit, but like they got it. So it's kind of hard to do that, but like all the other pieces, you can change the look of it to make it, a little more unique. But like I start looking, like what gets fun is like if you get, I don't know. I mean, I'm so in deep with this that I like everything old and vintage. So some people are like, they want to build a nostalgic car or a traditional car, but like they come from a different world where this is their only vintage thing. But like if you start looking at like vintage as a whole in the time frame, you can really start getting a lot of inspiration from what you want to do with the car. So like we were talking about right before we started, I was pitching this idea to Mike for the podcast. It's like, so one of the things is like, if you're building a 50s, like mid to late 50s car, just start looking at like furniture, home design, and fashion from that era. And that's really going to give you a snapshot into like what the car kind of should feel and look like.
A cool thing you could do is Life magazines from the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
any Life magazines are very affordable. Swap meets or yard sales, you can always pick stuff up like that because there'll be adverts for 50s cars of that era, which a lot of hot rods and customs, a lot of times they took a lot of that newer car stuff and transitioned it to hot rods or customs. So you can get that choice of material, especially for adverts of 50s cars. You can see all the interior color choices and fabrics and transition that to your build. I mean, Life magazines you could buy for like $1 for an entire year, I think. They're so cheap.
They're so cheap. Every flea market, they're like
everywhere.
And that's a good point because like I've been seeing a cool trend I've been seeing with upholstery recently. And Mikey Seats is a well-known upholstery guy that's doing retro stuff. He's been one of the big ones I've noticed, but other guys are doing it also. I'm not putting shade on anybody. He's just the one that comes to mind because he's been doing some great cars. But like they're picking like cool kind of what would be busy fabrics from like say a 50s GM car, Caddy, whatever, and maybe in the Caddy or the GM car the car's so crazy that you don't zone in on how you don't notice how cool the center fabric is in the seat. They're like pulling these cool fabric patterns out and then putting it in like a custom or a hot rod.
Oh yeah.
And then when it's done right, it's like blows your freaking mind when you see it because it's so cool. But then you start looking in and you're like, oh, that's like 56 Pontiac.
Yeah. Where'd you get that crazy fabric from? You're like, it was an option in 56.
I found an old roll of it, and they're like, so like recently that stuff's been like eating away at my brain because it's like, oh my god, there's a whole nother world of like optional fabrics and stuff like that.
Back in the day, a guy would have just went to a car dealership and like, oh, let's go look at brand new Pontiacs. You're walking through, you're like, oh shit, that'd be so cool to use
that fabric
in a hot rod.
Yeah, and you see that a little bit in the magazines where there was like some stuff. There was of course wacky stuff, but you did see that with some cars where they were picking like fabric choices from other cars, and I think that's like that's a neat thing I've seen where people have been getting more into doing that kind of stuff. So that's a good example of like it's different. It probably wasn't as popular as it's become now with some of the higher end cars. Like for instance, the seats he did for Cody's 3-window, 32 3-window is like freaking. The interior is like it's crazy, and that car is a good example of a car that's done in like that kind of 50s show rod, but still subtle type car, and it's like so badass and
subtle in quotations.
Yeah, well, it's subtle in a good way. It doesn't have like wacky. You think of some of the Barris and bigger builders, they were starting to get wacky in that era, and his car's still like, it's still subtle. I mean, it's detailed to the nines, but it's like, it's still subtle, and overall you can tell what the car is. But that's a good example, like with the interiors, and the Life magazine thing's a good example. I've been looking at old advertisements of cars, trying to think of, like the Sweetheart Roadster's been on my radar for doing a big push in the next year or two to get that car done. So I've been really struggling with the color choice on that car. So I've been looking at old advertisements online of like any 57, 58, 59, even 60 car. But like the way I'm building that car, I've been kind of saying like 58, 59 is the time period because I did the quad taillights and headlight type thing. And that's like 58 GM started. It was like everything was getting that. So I'm like, okay, if you were building a car like that, like you were saying, like, oh, you saw one at the dealership and thought that was cool. Well, what are the cool colors of that era? And it's like you start looking at those.
That's like the best era for colors.
Yeah, there's like that. There's like all these like mist. I should look them up. But there's like GM had like a neat.
I will say that late 50s. Even like 55 and up is a great color selection for cars then. They're just like a very wide variety. And the other good part about looking through Life magazine is the ads, the advertising itself is like the best era of advertising ever. Yeah, is the mist, there's all these mist colors, I guess fire mist that GM used. There's like I have some saved in my phone, like a aqua. Well, here's 64, but like 64 Caddy, aquamarine, fire mist. It's like like a little bit of metallic in it. 58 Buick, green mist. And they're like these cool kind of colors.
and you start noticing that like that fire mist was like the cool optional color that you could get, and those are like they just pop, on that style car where you're doing the white interior
Yep.
and a lot of chrome, just like those cars had, but on a custom or a hot rod. It's kind of works. So, and then like I looking through the magazines, a lot of times it's like you look at what are the common colors. That's the only thing that stinks with all these. Most of the magazines are black and white,
especially the little books.
Yeah, so I a lot of times read like what was the color. Like this color was kick ass. Like in black and white, it looks awesome, and then you start reading what was the color. Sometimes you're surprised. You're like, it's like some weird pink color.
Yeah,
not weird.
It looks
like,
white in the black and white photo.
Yeah, and you're like, wow, that thing's pink. I don't know if I could see that, but like Bahama Blue was a big one.
Yeah.
Bahama Blue metallic on GM, and that the 38 we have, I think at some point that was probably Bahama Blue. It's been a bunch of shades of blue. But yeah, like you start looking at, I look a lot of times at like furniture and design.
Appliances,
like a lot of that stuff, you could start to see the crossover with like what like the big customizers were doing.
Yeah.
Like you look at like the shape and styling of like TVs and home stuff, and you're like, I can kind of see where they were doing the crazy antennas off of the cars, and you're like, you just look at like TVs from that era, and you're like, oh, I kind of see the styling.
Bathroom colors.
Yeah.
Pink and green and purple.
Yeah.
Everything in the whole bathroom is that color.
Yeah, and that stuff, I mean, that's what they were doing. So the cars were kind of like
the same way.
Same kind of thing. So I think like with picking fabrics and interior styles, like that's something that I've been thinking about looking closer at.
I feel like that's often missed in builds too. Like guys put like a very cool looking car from the outside, and then you look in the inside and it's like there's a big thing that could have been transferred to the interior.
Yeah.
And it's like very plain and not boring, but it's like the car looks great from the outside and you look in the interior and you're like, it's kind of feel like the outside is so killer and the inside just needed that something else.
Yeah. And there is a thin line between cool and subtle and like over the top, which if that's what the car is, it's over the top. But yeah, I agree. Sometimes it's like we see that I see that a lot with people. And that's back to going to the beginning of picking out the things that you really like from some of these cars. You're not going to see a minivan seat in any of the cars that you like. So putting a minivan seat in and just throwing a Mexican blanket over it, like that might...
Don't knock the Mexican blanket. I'm about to legit do
that.
No,
I know that, but like, but you don't have like a finished out car.
I'm saying,
like,
I know.
Sometimes people have a car that's all finished out, and it's like, it still looks like a minivan seat with black leather over it. And it's like, you know, I'm not saying you can't use one of those for the seat frame, but like some of that stuff, I think you know what you like, and then people, it gets lost. And that's why I try and like with any of the cars that any of the cars that I'm trying to put together, and it's like I try to, like in the interior, you start to think about like what other cars do I like. So you know, with the Mercury, that's been that video got a lot of yes and no. We got a lot of positive and negative. Biggest thing I noticed is that a lot of people that watch our videos, even if you're older and you actually lived it, seem to have forgotten what actually was cool back then.
Yeah.
Because we had 1 million people. We seem to be on interiors a lot in this video, or this podcast. But I don't know how many comments we had that people said that the white trimming around the carpet and the floor mats and stuff were like, that's not vintage. That's ugly. I don't know why you did that. I've never seen that before on a hot rod or a custom from back in the day. Like that, we had dozens of comments from people. And you know, a lot of them are older, and they're like, a lot of the people I was just responding, look at a magazine. Look at some of the famous cars.
Look at the Skelly 34 that we had. It was built in the 60s. It had black with white piping on all the interior.
Yeah. So it's like not uncommon. It seemed to be the carpet was the big thing that people were focused on that they didn't like. And if you start looking at these cars either in person or in photos, you'll actually notice that a lot of the show cars or a lot of the cars, that was like the thing. I know people feel like it's busy going around the floor mats, but that was kind of the thing, because I feel like it was a way to make something that's actually normally kind of boring interesting and pop. Yeah, because like you don't even look at the carpet normally on most of these cars, but when you have that white piping, it's like whoa, that just makes everything like pop out of there. So
and the Glory Coupe had white piping around the floor mats, built in like 48, 49. So
yeah, well, probably earlier than that.
That's because it was in Hot Rod in 49. So it's probably built 46, 47.
Yeah, so it's like that was done a lot. I just think that people getting this. You get in this way of like carpets just need to be black, and that's it. Plain black or plain whatever, and that's it. It's like I agree that does look good, but if you're trying to take it up a notch, or look at those cars, and actually a bunch of my cars have that. Like when I did the T, I remember Joe. I did the T. He's like, "You sure about that? I don't know." And I started.
Isn't the Stroll car the same way too?
Stroll car's the same way. Skelly car, I had him because it didn't have a carpet in the Skelly car.
Oh, that's right.
Joe actually made the interior in the Skelly car, and same thing. And after like the first one, and I showed him the photos, he's like, "Oh, okay, I get it." Like that was probably an instance where maybe that wasn't his taste, but I started showing him why and what I was doing. Now, like the 32 Roadster, more of a like subdued, not down and dirty, but like just subdued hot rod. And looking at the old photos that we could see of the car, I'm like, that wasn't a car that it seems like would have that. So we just did plain black carpet. So that's the take on the interior. I would, I've been looking at a lot of that stuff, but like trying to take overall inspiration from that era. And so if you're doing Art Deco, it's like start looking at Art Deco, industrial design.
All Art Deco design. What's crazy about Art Deco is it took over everything. It wasn't like it just stayed in homewares. It was like everything was Art Deco.
Oh yeah, there's buildings. Everything from everything that you saw, touched, used. Yeah. Everything had some sort of Art Deco design to it, which is like really, really neat. But it's kind of cool to take some of that stuff and add it into a car that's custom. So like even, the Fords that were Art Deco, I think they kind of did it on everything. But you could take from other cars to maybe get stuff that's Art Deco that's even more, like for instance, it's really popular to use the Chrysler DeSoto airflow airstream parts from the same era on Fords and other cars because the stuff's even more elaborate Art Deco.
100%.
So I've been looking at a lot of that. Like what made me think of that is like I was going through door handles and door pulls for the sedan delivery yesterday, trying to put together.
You were deep in door handle hell there for a little while.
So, but I was going through them and I was seeing all kinds of neat Art Deco ones. I don't even know what car they're off of, but I'm like, man, they have these cool like lines on them.
Yeah.
But man, if we could put a set of 4 of them together, they'd be amazing in a car. So it's like
I feel like you pick up on a lot of people miss a lot of that stuff when they go to museums. They're looking at the outside of the car.
Yes.
And because we see so many cars, I actually look at the inside and the little doodads on it more than the car itself.
Yes.
I'm trying to look in the window and look at the dash, look at the door handles and all the stuff on the dash to like, that's where that gauge is from that really oddball, Nash or not Nash, LaSalle or some weird off-brand, not as popular car. I'm like, those gauges are so killer. They look great in a hot rod.
Yeah.
But everyone's too busy standing back looking at the whole car. It's like, I want all the little
details. Yeah, and sometimes it's like if you're building something and maybe you don't want to go through the process of getting a vintage set of gauges and restoring them, and it takes really long. B, you have to be really dedicated to make all that stuff work, and it's quite expensive. Yeah. So a good example of what something like that is like the 38. For the time being, because we wanted to just get it going and driving, I was like, I want to put something in. It's kind of feels like it could have been in the car, but I want something that just worked. Now, they don't just work, unfortunately. I've learned my lesson in that. But I went and got, like, Speedway has these...
They're Omega, right?
Mega gauges that are, like, modeled after LaSalle gauges, and they're modern, but they look old, and they had a analog set. Well, I bought them. they did kind of work. I had one that was bad out of the box. They sent me another one. And now my tachometer just went bad after like a summer of driving.
There was a bajillion comments on one of the Week in the Life of videos of you driving and the tack didn't work. Everyone was losing their mind.
Like, yeah, it went bad.
Yeah.
So that's... But that was one of those instances where I just put them in because everything came with them and just used them. And sometimes if you're doing a build, like, that's okay. But at least you don't pick... You do this totally nostalgic car and then you put these freaking Dolphin digital gauges in. And then the rest of the car is like all retro. At least those gauges, even though they're modern, they...
appear vintage.
They appear vintage. And for me, on that car, it was kind of like, let's just get something in that worked and matched. And then... I may do something better as the car evolves with the way I am. It's realistic that I'm going to put some kind of much crazier gauges together and get them, restored and put in. But that was an option. At least that was the best option I could pick that looked the feel I was going for.
That is the most disappointing thing at, like, say, Grand National. Looking at some of the nice higher end cars and you're looking, it's got like Speedway odometer gauges. It's like
Speedway or odometer, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, the car looks so good from the outside. You look and you're like...
I think that's a lot of that where people just want... I think it's where people don't... The difficult thing with gauges is it takes... And again, I'm just thinking that because we just got some gauges back from Williamson. There's not many people in the country that do vintage gauges. Yeah. And most of them that do them are... very backlogged. So a lot of people don't want to wait the time. They don't want to hunt the gauges, number one. And that's kind of a difficult thing, just to hunt down gauges. Because I'm not even as crazy OCD with the gauges as some other friends I have are, where like the coloring of the fading in the faces.
Yeah.
They get real crazy about that. And I can see it. But you have to really be dedicated because it's like you got to find the gauges, you got to get them restored. It's kind of like a lot of things with old stuff. You're going to have to get 3 of the same thing to get one good one. And then you send it to the person that does it. And I've used Bob's Speedometer. I used Williamson. Yep. So it's like, and those are the 2 I've used in recent history. Both of them took a little while. It's not cheap. And cheap is relative, but whatever you think it's going to cost, it's going to be more expensive. Yes. It's just like anything. And be prepared to have possible disappointments. They may open the gauges up and go, half this gauge looked okay on the face, but literally all we can use is the face and the bezel.
That literally happened to you, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So be prepared for that. And that's going to get expensive. It's going to take more time. So...
and in general, if you're building a hot rod, you should be prepared for disappointment basically with anything you touch because it's all old shit. So any little piece of the car that you touch, you could open it up and it's just totally fucked inside.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, that's one of those things that happens quite often. Yeah. And it's like...
It happens to us literally weekly for the most part.
Yeah, but I try and look at like... I'm trying to look at, again, trying to do things a little different, but, still retro or nostalgic or traditional. And that's like with the gauges, like you said, you start going to museums and going to like an AACA show where there's like a lot of...
Stay for Hershey an extra day and actually go to the car show.
Or the museum,
yeah.
You're going to see stuff you've never seen before. You're going to see really... neat oddball models. That's one of the things I've found is like I've seen oddball, like I don't know, a 37, like I'm just throwing random stuff out, but like a 30, well, Studebaker's a good one. Like there's a 37 Studebaker. Well, the Studebakers vary in how cool they are greatly.
Same like Packards.
Yeah, by the model. And even though they're all 37 Packards, the gauges on a junior is not nearly as cool as the layout on like a senior, the 12 cylinder with all, that. So like you start looking at these cars at those events and you're like, whoa, that is like an amazing gauge pound. Now, of course, if that car is expensive, the gauges are going to be really expensive. So do realize you're going to probably be in for...
But I will say with some of that stuff, if the car's very uncommon and rare, you never know at Hershey. You might
True.
walk by a booth or you find one gauge here, one gauge
Yep.
there. It's one of those things that we keep in our phones, just reference photos of like what this goes to, and you just be walking Hershey and be like, oh shit, you find one gauge at this booth, and then next year you find another gauge, and after about 5 years you have a whole set of really rare gauges that you paid next to nothing for, but you still got to get them restored at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people we joke about, and like friends give me crap, or whatever people, that's why there's a case of gauges. That's why maybe it's excessive. There's a ton of Strombergs because it takes multiples, and like the gauges, for instance, if you look in my gauge cabinet, there's a lot of what Mike's saying where I have 2 or 3 of a style of gauge, and I still need the other 2. I still need the speedometer. And I don't need them yet, but I better start gathering them so when I go to put the car together.
Or if you look, there's 2 of the same, you look closely, and one's missing a needle, the other one's complete, and you got to send all of it out to just make one good set.
One good set. Yeah. So, like, that's kind of, for me, we talked about in other podcasts, like how I enjoy the hobby. I enjoy the hunt to gather parts to put cars that are in my head together. So that's like a fun thing to, and I need to get better. Like, I don't have all my gauges. I should start like the magazines, a list in my phone, what gauges I'm looking for. Because especially when they're expensive like that, if I'm standing there looking at a set of gauges at Hershey, and it's the last one I need, and it's full-blown retail, it's a $500 gauge, but it's the last one I need.
Yeah.
Well, I probably paid $20 a gauge for all the other ones just by accident. It's like if you got to pay retail to complete the set, if you average them all out, you're still ahead of the game.
I've texted him multiple times at swap meets to be like, do you have this wings gauge? He's like, I think I do.
But I don't know.
Yeah, we really don't know.
Yeah, so like, and that only really, I guess that only really comes into play if it's expensive. I mean, if you don't know, if you know that you collect that particular part and it's really cheap, well, just buy it. Like we've talked about, you could always, if you bring it home and you have one, or the one you have at home is better, you just resell it and you make a couple bucks. But or even if you pay retail and you bring it home, if it's really rare and yours is better, you just sell it for what you paid for. At least you got it. But that's, gauges can definitely be a jump off point. That's one of those things that can inspire you to build a car around. You find a set of gauges, or you see a car at Hershey and you go, man, I'd love to build a dashboard. Like I have a bunch of dashboards, and as well as the gauges. And it's like, build the car around kind of like a dashboard. So a good example is the green Roadster that we sold to Brian. Like, we got that car, and I was using the oh God, why did I forget the name? I'm on the point. Race the horse.
Henderson Roadster.
Henderson Roadster. Jesus.
I knew that. I thought that's the car you're looking for, but I didn't want to jump in too fast.
Yeah, so like when Brian was purchasing the car and he came and hung out with me, and we talked and whatever, he was kind of like, man, I want to continue this car exactly how what would you have wanted to do? And I was like, honestly, like, here's a couple things I might have done if I was keeping it longer, but like, just look at the Henderson Roadster. I said, just look at all the photos of the Henderson Roadster, and anything you see kind of on that, like, take that vibe and do similar stuff. That's what I kind of used as one of the famous cars, and then a lot of dry lakes photos. So it was kind of like, look at that stuff. So I was trying to look at like somebody taking a stock 32 Roadster like we did and lightly modifying it. So that's why I was like building the car. I'm like, well, the dashboard's kind of nice. What would have a person done if they had a decent 32 Roadster in the 40s and wanted to build a neat gauge panel on maybe a car that's a little higher end? It's like, well, just take a fancy car gauge panel that kind of fits.
Yep.
And now you can work around and keep the wood grain. And that was like a weird thing that isn't super common. And that was a good one. I did a ton of research before I cut that dash. And I started looking at like old photos, and I go, let me look at what Pierce Arrow did. What did some of the other high-end brands, were they doing these really cool like gauge panels that they kept the wood grain dash? And I was actually like, because what was weird is I looked at all these other people in hot rods that have done those that same dash panel, and they were like never wood grain. And then I started looking at the original the stock vehicles of that era with similar things, and I'm like, actually wood grain dash was like an option in
Yeah.
those cars. So I'm like, well, that kind of goes with the whole vibe. So, and then I put it in, and the way you did everything, it's like, holy crap, it all works.
And
like,
what was great about that panel is it took up so much of the wood grain that it wasn't overbearing.
Yes.
There was enough colors of the polished aluminum, the back black bezel that you guys made, the color of the gauges, and the wood grain.
Yep.
There was enough of all of it to like flow in together
and
nicely.
it toned the wood grain
Yes.
down on the dash.
And that's how a lot of those cars were. The dash metal that was wood grain was actually not a lot because they had like a big fancy gauge panel.
Yep.
The glove box was huge.
Yeah, with a clock in it.
And there's a radio head in the middle. So there was like the wood grain itself wasn't that abrupt and in your face.
Yes.
All the other stuff accented it.
That's a good point. Yeah, that kind of helps it, but it's like that's a good way to look at like what were other manufacturers doing, or fancier cars, and you're trying to replicate that idea because that's, I mean, it's almost exactly like what somebody would have done back in the day, when they were building a car before the internet. They would have been inspired by something they saw. So maybe there was a doctor in their town that had an Auburn, and you saw the Auburn parked out front of the general store, and you're like, oh my God, look at that gauge panel. I want to do something like that in my Model A Roadster. That'd be so cool. And you do something like that. So that's kind of how I've been treating it, is like if you see a car somewhere in person or in a photo, you start taking those things as jump off points. But like a lot of times also like inspiration is look at especially with Fords, it's a little easier, I feel like. But like with Ford, with having Mercury, Lincoln, Etzel, like start looking at, if you're building a Ford, start looking at what the similar year higher end car was. And it's a common thing. You look and put Zephyr parts on a Ford or a Mercury is kind of
super common. So talking about the 38 convertible, that's a good segue of Lincoln parts on a Ford. That's got Zephyr taillights. There was some slight recreation of the fender to make them fit, but they look very natural on the back end of that car compared to the normal Ford 39 taillights.
Yeah, I think taking the higher end model, much like we were talking about Packards and some of those, taking a look at the model, the brand of car that's in the same family that's a little higher end. So the Lincolns, the Zephyr obviously is one of the pinnacles. So if you look at that, you could take some of the pieces or parts or even styling cues from that. So even when you look into, say, the interior on a Zephyr or something like that, it has like a chrome frame around the seats. That's little details that you can take. And you don't need to necessarily use Zephyr seats, but you could make a tubular frame around your seat that is chromed or stainless and polished, and it will kind of give you that same feel, so to speak. But I mean, people since the beginning of customizing and hot rodding have been taking Zephyr dashes. Even a Mercury is a little fancier than a Ford, so you could take some parts off of a Mercury and put them on a Ford. For whatever reason, that didn't seem as popular. Everybody just seems to jump right to the Lincoln.
Well, definitely in 39, nobody wants 39 Mercury taillights on about anything.
No, some of that stuff, did not. That's not a great example, probably. But if you look at, so even get into the late 40s, 50s, 49 to 51 Mercury has a lot of neat stuff on it. And like myself, I'm going to take the dash from a slightly newer Mercury, put it in my 39 Mercury as the plan, 50, 51 dash, just because it's a little more chrome, a little more fancy. And I'm not doing 100% like Art Deco on that car, so to speak. Some people go really crazy with Art Deco on them. But on that one, I'm maybe doing a little bit of a late 40s, early 50s kind of vibe and putting that Mercury dash in just because there's a lot of chrome and, it's kind of fancy looking. And it seems like that, you can look at colors too from the era that you're trying to build, so a lot of the cars from that era, the Art Deco era, actually used a lot of earth tones in the interior, so it wasn't nearly as common to see the bright colors, especially Ford and Mercury, especially Lincoln too, but Ford and Mercury especially, you were seeing all the like earth tones. So it was in that era was browns and tans and the mohair and stuff like that. And I think you saw it a little bit in the hot rods and customs some, but I think everybody just kind of went to black. Seems to be like the
Yeah.
one of the more common. But you do see a lot with brown.
I feel like a lot of the higher end cars of that era were black or brown leather.
Yeah.
There wasn't any very like bright, vibrant colors in the
Or that
interior.
oxblood color
Yeah.
you would see in some of them as well, which is I think where part of that in the customs kind of came from, because you would see that oxblood red leather or
Yeah.
whatever in the interior of some of those cars. But as far as the overall inspiration, you can just start looking. I also saw it seems like a lot of guys were looking to the race world. So if you're building a hot rod from that period, you've seen parts being used off of real race cars. So even the Dry Lakes guys, it's like they were borrowing wheels and tires from like Indy cars and stuff like that. So even the styling cues, you started to see some of that. So the track noses on the T's and Model A's and even 32, whatever. But you were starting to see they were looking at the track noses on the midgets and sprint cars and stuff like that, and it's like, well, man, that looks pretty cool. It's like,
And we talked about that in I forget which podcast, but there was
was
like that era in the 40s where like every high end car had a track nose on the front of it.
yeah. I think it was when we were doing America's Roadster
Oh,
winners.
that's right. Yeah.
Most beautiful Roadster winners. There was the first handful all had track noses. So, they were that trend. I'm sure started from the actual dirt cars that were running with track noses, and somebody thought, oh, that's kind of neat looking, and they stole one off of a track car, or a guy that was making them for the dirt cars, had somebody had them make it for their car. And that's how I feel like a lot of these trends that these guys building the stuff from the era that we obsess over were also being inspired by other places and things and stuff like that. So like just putting yourself in the shoes of that era when you're building a car, but also taking little cues from not only the historic cars, but like the guys that lived it. So like for me on the Sweetheart Roadster, the one detail that a lot of people comment on when they come here and see the car is the radio in the rear deck facing straight up. And that wasn't, like, a lot of people think that was something that was like my idea or whatever, and they're kind of confused why. We even got comments in the videos like, why would you do that? Oh, rain. Oh, what happens if you're daily driving it to New York City in the rain?
It snows.
Yeah, or it snows. What I got from is I saw specifically some cars in person and in magazines that had that. It wasn't a super common trend, but I did see it a bunch of times, and we've seen cars literally that were no-name cars that it was done, like, not by no-name, just cars that weren't magazine cars but were real cars built back in the day that had that done. And every time I see it, it like reinforces it. The one that comes to mind is that one we helped out with organizing an auction where there was that pink 32.5 window.
Yep.
Just a totally, it was just,
I think that was the first car I saw in person with it like as found with it in the package tray.
But that car was totally like not a magazine car. Wasn't like it was some super high-end builder. It was just some young man in the 50s built this hot rod, and that was the thing he did. And what I thought was neat is a couple of older guys I talked to as far as the roadsters and stuff goes. It's like, well, put yourself in your shoes back in that time, especially in the roadsters. Everybody was going to like drive-in movies. They were going to, you go to the drive-in burger joint or hanging out or whatever. So you're hanging out outside your car. So you could just reach your hand over and turn the radio on, lean on your car talking, and you could turn the radio on, play the radio, or
sitting on that rear tire. It's literally just like right there.
Right there. So I just thought that idea was just so cool. And again, it was something that was a real modification that was done back in the day. But doesn't seem to have taken off with other people doing it. So then I went down the rabbit hole of trying to find a radio that was cool, but not overwhelming.
Yeah.
You go down the rabbit hole of even looking at vintage radios that were in different cars, and man, there's some beautiful radios, but a lot of them are like kind of built into the dash or part of the trim, and they're big and bulky, and in that little tray I needed something that was fancy, but
Not
simple.
over the top and not gigantic.
Yeah, and a lot of the radios I was finding also in the 20s, 30s, 40s, even into the 50s, they had a radio head, and it might be just a little head that mounted on your steering column.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a face. And then totally out of the blue, I don't remember where I saw one the first time, but like out of its element, the one that we have in the car is a 46.8 Ford radio. And like when they're in the dash in a done car, I guess I never noticed that.
A 46.8 dash is pretty busy. There's a lot of trim and chrome and like just stuff on the dashboard.
And the radio is kind of like the way it's set in. I guess I just never noticed it. But then like somewhere at a swap meet or somewhere.
I think we found them at an estate.
Okay.
We found like a whole pile of them. You're like, this is perfect. I think Jason Comey was with us. He's like, oh, it's a 46.8 radio. My dad has like 20 of them.
I'm like, what? And then I grabbed a bunch and got a good one. But it's just cool because it's like got chrome knobs. It's kind of a little fancy, but not over the top. It's got the curved, clear cover over lens over the the dot where the radio dial is, and it lent itself pretty well. And those are also meant to be kind of like mounted from behind, so the face sticks through. So the way I did it, it's like you see the chrome and the fanciness, but the bulkiness of the radio you don't really see. So it's just a cool little thing, and you upholster around all that, and it just is going to be super cool. So that's one of those little things. If you can find little details that you look at other cars or other things and put yourself in the shoes of that era, you can kind of think of why people were doing things like that. And that doesn't mean you have to follow everything exactly to the.
Do you take any inspiration when you're walking around car shows at all for little detail stuff like that?
Some. It's always tough because a lot of the historic cars, when I see them, I can't say that. There's some people that do, there's high-end cars that we see that, certainly you see something, you're like, wow, that was such a neat little idea that guys did. But, yeah, I think it's...
I like doing it at Grand National where they have the project cars that are in progress. Yeah. Because it's neat to see how they...
That stuff's also not disappointing.
Discouraging
is the word I'm looking for, because it's so goddamn nice, so good, and I'm like, oh my god, I would love to do that, but I could not pull that off. Whatever the thing
imagine
is.
How I feel. I really can't pull that off. I just look at it and go, that's really neat.
I mean that's a great. You can always get ideas, and I definitely do that at some of the bigger shows like that, where I'm taking, same as you said, at shows of fancier cars, taking detail shots of how somebody did a shock mount or did a little detail on something is cool. I did a lot of that. I think it's interesting to get some inspiration on seeing these in progress cars that are really high end, because it just makes you like kind of want to push your own work a little further, even if you're just an average guy like any of us. It's like you see those cars and it is discouraging, but it's also like, okay, well, I need to do things a little bit better. Like the way they did it, okay, that's really neat. Maybe I could kind of use that inspiration. And I did that with the Mercury. Like I talked about in the video, there's other guys that I replicated a little bit of the way they did something, and nowhere near as nice as they did. But like I took their ideas as a jump off point, and then kind of did it my own. Changed it a little bit. But I think the definitely like specific parts. Like if you see something that's weird that I never saw a part before, like sometimes there's like neat little doodads.
Definitely
like,
doodads.
Swap meet type stuff, and you see a guy's car and he's got some neat little, I don't know, knobs on the dash or something on the engine that's dressed up. You're like, man, I've never seen that before. You talk to the owner and they're like, oh, that's Cal Custom made those. They're kind of hard to find, but they're around.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now I'm on the hunt.
Yeah.
So like, I know my buddy Nick, he wrote the moon. On the rocker covers of the olds, I have a set of moon knurled knobs that say moon real lightly with the moon logo.
They're almost like hand stamped.
Yeah, and he's been looking for a set. He likes them on my car, and I know he's been like, keeping an eye out for them. He said the other day he saw like one on eBay, and he was tempted to buy it. And I'm like, I never realized when I got them how...
Where'd you find them at?
I got those...
Was it Maple Grove?
No. I think those... I believe they came from an estate in collection in Delaware. Guy's alive, not estate. I guess that could be considered a state. Guy, because I also got those the side plate covers that say like Lucky 7 or whatever.
That's right, yeah.
And the guy had a 32 with a nail head, and he said that he had those parts on that car years ago.
Right.
And I think those came also from there as well. I think I did all that stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
I can't recall, but I got them somehow like by accident, just picking. I thought they were neat, put them on, and then you get it, and you're like, oh wow, actually,
perfect.
I can't find another set of these.
Yeah.
These are pretty obscure.
Especially Moon stuff. They were very not produced a ton of, especially little things like that.
Yeah, or just with stuff that gets thrown away when a guy
Yeah.
takes an engine apart, it just gets like lost, whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's looking at advertisements. You said that earlier, but
Yeah.
like just old ads of, anything of the time is a big one that I look at, and furniture is another one I really look at because I think it's like the shapes and styles of stuff from that era is kind of like.
Another thing I will say, the back of the hot rod books, look at the advertisements of parts or find an old J.C. Whitney catalog, because you might be able to find some inspiration of like scoops or a fuel block you didn't know that they made, and you're looking through and you're like, oh wow, those would look really cool. Take a picture and have to hunt them down as you're doing swap meets and stuff like that.
And it's also neat looking at some of these cars in the magazines or in person. I just a jump off thing from that when we visited Titus, it made me think of it. But like some of these real deal home built type cars, a lot of the stuff they didn't even buy stuff; they like made it themselves, like maybe in shop class. So I was thinking that Roadster that Titus has that he got from a friend who built it back in the day.
Oh, the fuel block.
Yes, he's got a little like I think it's a homemade kind of like square fuel block, squarish rectangular fuel block. But then what was cool is he had two or three of the little tiny miniature clear fuel filters, the real small ones.
They're like little Carters, I believe.
Yeah, and they're in each one. And I was like, all the time when I do cars, you do a fuel block and then you put the one filter on. And I'm like, well, that's kind of genius. Each one's getting filtered by a little one. It's like, that's pretty cool. And it just looked cool because there was just...
I just found a whole box of those the other day. I don't remember where the hell they're at, but I touched them at some point. I don't know where they're at, but
yeah, that would be cool to set aside.
I'll put that in my memory to set aside the next time I find them.
Yeah. But that gets you down this rabbit hole. You see something like that inspires you, and you go, well, maybe I'm not going to steal exactly, I'm not going to take that photo and make the same fuel block, but maybe I'll make my own fuel block, maybe round the edges more, make it a different shape, and then use different filters in the same way. And it's like you're just using... That was what somebody actually did back in the day, and you can use that as a jump-off point. And that's literally the same as what all these guys were doing back then.
Yeah.
It's a little weird with the internet nowadays. People get all like, oh, that was my idea. You copied that. That guy copied that off my car. It's like that's what everyone was doing back in the day. You would go to a car show, go to an event, or go to wherever, and you'd see some car and be like, oh, that's a great idea. And you just use that as your jump-off point. So I try and do, and even I guess you do the same thing with vintage aircraft. A lot of the parts that cross over on old customs and hot rods, mainly hot rods, is engine related, is off aircraft. Like the little aircraft fuel filters that were used on race cars and used on
some gauges. Some of the early sun gauges were aircraft.
Yeah. So some of that stuff you can kind of look at that. But I mean, even just look at the styling on a plane from the 40s.
When you were talking about the piping thing, I was thinking of airplanes. Because some of the airplanes, the carpet was done like that with like fancy piping.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, or trains.
Yeah, trains, definitely.
Any of that stuff. So that's always like a...
I feel like a lot of people don't look for, and we talked about before the podcast, even art. People are looking at inspiration just solely inside the car world. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there, like especially furniture, mid-century modern furniture, art. There are a lot of colors and design choices that would work great on a hot rod.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that, again, when you start doing stuff that's a little out of the norm for traditional, people start throwing a fit. So one of the things that I did on the Sweetheart Roadster that I think I still like, I'm not saying I'm going to keep it forever, I don't know, but I did those old gold... They're like cabinet pulls for the door for the glove boxes, and people are like, "That's cheesy. That's blah blah blah." Look at a Barris car. Everybody sucks Barris's dick overall. Like half the customs that they did. Look at fucking all the customs that Winfield, all those guys were doing. Drawer pull knobs in the grill.
Yeah.
You know, all these things they were using the corrugated metal that they were putting in grills and around the car. It's shit that you literally would go to the hardware store
What about, or firewalls? Guys who do like that, like Titus has with that crinkle material. It's just like backsplash material, I'm pretty sure.
All that stuff is literally shit that you would go to the hardware store and you'd be like, oh, that's a neat pattern. I need to fill a hole.
Yeah.
let's put that in. Oh, that's already chrome. Like, that was the other thing. It was like, the stuff was already chromed from, you know, the hardware store. And you're like, well, that's cool. Or
you're walking through the hardware store and you see a knob for a door or a drawer pull, and you're like, I wonder what 75 of those would look like in a 32 grill.
Yeah, and it's like everybody, that's what's always interesting to me with the current, you know, traditional stuff. And I'm not picking on anybody. It's like, well, and I get but the same way. You get stuck in this like certain type of car, like we talked about, really famous cars that were built, everybody kind of builds it to the same way of those. Mm-hmm. Where when you start looking further into some of these cars that are outlying, it's like, that's what they were doing, and they were doing a little bit of different stuff, and maybe they did a drawer pulled knob because it had a neat little shape to it that was, and it was the same color gold as some other stuff.
And I feel like some of those less known cars, those guys were a little bit more resourceful of just using whatever they could find.
Correct.
Instead of like making a knob for the glove box, they just went to the hardware store and went, "Huh, that's kind of cool," and threw it on, and that's what it was.
It's exactly it. So it's like, and even that is like at the realm of like, even I did it and I was like, I like it. It's cool. And I think what the problem is that you know what it is.
Yeah.
I think if it was something that I made from scratch and then had plated, I wouldn't feel that way. But I know that it is a drawer pull, you know, but it's like literally it was new old stock ones that I had for my house.
Yeah.
And I was like, that might be kind of cool. I like how the shape is of it. And it's, you know, whatever. And it's like, so a lot of that stuff, it's like people kind of shit on it if isn't exactly the most common ways that people did it. And
the internet is a great place, but also a terrible place for people's opinions.
Yeah, and I sure, I mean, it may not be everybody's taste, but so were a lot of those cars that were done back then and the stuff that they were doing, you know.
That's why a lot of these cars are so popular, is they were, at the time, they were against the total norm of what was happening, and that's why they stood out and are popular.
Yeah, or they were so shocking for the time. And then nowadays, we've replicated it 27 times over in our own watered-down way that it's not as exciting or crazy. So that's, and I think that's the case. But I think it's kind of fun to look at some of that old furniture, household type stuff, and you'll be surprised what kind of things you find that, you know, would work. Like I did on the T, it's like that perforated metal, same idea. Think it Barrison, a lot of the how-to articles, they used a lot of that perforated metal in different patterns. There's ones with stars and, you know, little holes, and I wanted to hide an electric fan on that, and I saw like some of the show cars, they were putting that stuff over everything to hide on the firewall, like Mike said. They were putting it over the radiator now back in the day they were running no fan. So I was like, maybe I'll build a little box that's kind of like over the radiator that blocks the radiator, like it's a show car, and then you hide a little slim fan because unfortunately in that car I have problems with overheating. So, or not overheating, running hot.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things, like you've been seeing guys doing that now a little bit, but I feel like it'd be cool to see it done even more, where people are hiding. Like, yes, you need some of these modern things to maybe make the car more drivable, but then you're inspired by what they were doing back in the day, and then you cover it up or hide it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, like those, they have those Kinmont brake, you know,
disc brake conversions
kits, and it's like, it's pretty cool. Some people like hate on it because like if you're being snobby, oh, they're not Kinmonts, but
they're
it's like,
not real Kinmonts,
and it's like, it's kind of cool because it has everything that's cool about a Kinmonts, that they look cool, but it actually works.
Yeah, because Kinmonts were disc brakes. They're just like 40s style disc brakes.
Yeah, it's like a different... they were different inside more, you know, than what we think of now for disc brakes. But like, that's a good example of like, once you hide them and they're on the car, 90% of the world wouldn't know the difference.
Oh, probably
so-
more than that.
Yeah, yeah. You have to actually be up on them and know the difference. And like, I think that's pretty cool, and that's a good thing. Now, if you're snobby and you enjoy the hobby in a way that hunting the real deal out, like I kind of feel like, then certainly, you may feel a certain way. But like, that's a great thing. They got that done. It's hidden. Guys are putting the 5-speed transmissions and stuff, and then they're putting a swan shifter on it.
Yeah.
And it looks cool, but they're able to drive the car more, and or makes the car more drivable for them. So like that all works. I mean, it's like I think if you can hide the stuff and you're inspired by the actual real deal old cars, the stuff comes out naturally and it doesn't feel that way. And I think that's a cool way to do the traditional. We should coin a term like traditional street rods, because there's a lot of those cars that are like,
That's
I don't know
very
what
true.
it is. I don't know what I call it, traditional street rods, but there's a lot of cars now with some of the new trends where it's like they're taking, the car overall as a silhouette or a whole looks like a traditional real deal nostalgic car. But then when you get up close, you can see maybe this way the seat's done, or the bias ply look radial tires. And yeah, when you take it in, you could pick apart. It's not, and the owner probably doesn't give a shit. But like, I think that's much better than the old street rod way.
Yeah, there's
I
no
think
bill of wheels or.
I think it's more timeless.
Yeah.
Is the way I put it. I mean, everything has trends change, but like, I think that's a nice way to kind of hide some of those things now, and it keeps the look that we all love from those old historic cars. But some guys don't want the hassle of dealing with all of that. So, but yeah, I mean that's. I mean, it depends how far you want to go with it all. You can be inspired by listening to 50s jazz or 40s big band while you're working in the garage. I sometimes do that on a Sunday, and it's actually kind of cool. It feels.
You were listening to a little big band this morning.
No, it was jazz. It was like soul.
Jazz,
I was listening to soul actually,
Yeah.
but mainly some soul. But yeah, I mean, it was like that type of music puts you in a place while you're working on the car, and it's like it's. I'm not being like we're playing dress up here or anything. It's just like the mindset of it. Just sometimes it's just cool when you're working in a car. It's like, man, I almost feel like this is as close as I'll ever get to what it felt like back in the day. Yes, I'm using a little bit more modern of tools sometimes, but like, when I'm letting the taillights in on the 38, listening to like 50s jazz, I'm like, man, this is as close as I'm ever going to get.
If you stop in on Sundays, Matt sometimes wears a zoot suit out here just to make it feel real old-timey.
No, that's not what they would wear. But yeah, like, it's just that kind of adds to the appeal, or I don't know, just it.
I'm just fucking with you.
I know, but I don't know how to explain it. If anybody that is listening has ever done that, it's kind of like
It takes you back in time.
Yeah, it's kind of like it really does. It's the same as when you're driving these cars. You're like, this could have been what a guy in his 20s, 30s, 40s, what it felt like and sounded like in the Barris shop. In any of these shops in the country, listening to this type of music, and it's just like, I don't know, it feels. And certainly we listen to like a wide variety of music depending on the day, but like a lot of times I do listen to some more of that type of music, especially when you're doing some of the customization and some of that stuff. It's just, I don't know, it's a cool way, and I think it helps inspire that big time.
Definitely. So I think we beat the horse on inspiration pretty good.
We could go for a while, but that's a pretty
well-rounded conversation.
Yeah.
We covered all aspects of the vehicle for the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
If you guys have anywhere you've ever found inspiration that we didn't cover, we'd love to hear. We're always looking for new places to find inspiration on what to do with these old hot rods and customs.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. That there's tons.
I'm sure there's very obvious places that we've missed.
If there's something that you found, like if you have, like we're saying, some outline and things that have inspired you. If you have one, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, it's really easy to comment. I think Spotify allows it as well. But YouTube always has some great conversation. If there's something like that that's inspired you, I'd love to hear it. Maybe it's a album cover or something like that, or you could go so many different ways. But if there's something that, like, maybe when you were building a car, something that gave you an inspiration for part of your car, we'd love to hear that, because that's that's kind of what's fun about this stuff is the dreaming and
Yeah.
and bench racing and pipe dreaming is like
I always love at car shows when you're like, how did you, what
Yeah.
made you build this? And you go into like this long story of like, oh, when I was a kid, my neighbor had one and blah. And it's always, those are the best stories to sit
my
down.
grandmother had a tablecloth that was this
Yeah.
color, and I remember it vividly as a kid. And I always wanted one.
That's such- those
I always
stories are
wanted
the
that
best.
color on a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like super cool. So I'd love to hear some of those inspirations.
Yeah.
You know, the first girl I made it with in the back seat was wearing a skirt that was this color. So I made my interior that color. So I think about the first time for the rest of my life. It's pretty cool. So if there's anything like that, we'd love to hear it. But thank you guys for listening to us ramble as always. It's been a lot of fun. And as a reminder, we do try and do these weekly. So if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, any of those type of audio outlets, you can certainly subscribe and it will notify you when we have a new episode. And also on YouTube, of course, if you subscribe. If you're not, we do videos too, by the way. If you don't know that, we do videos of all kinds of stuff. So thank you guys for following. Appreciate it. We'll catch you later.